We've won millions, taken on the largest insurers, and backed up our reputation with big wins in the courtroom. But only one injury case matters, yours. So if you want to win, we're ready to fight for you.
Rice Law. Best advice, call Rice.
Good morning, Baltimore. It is Monday, March 9th, and welcome in to the latest episode of the Early Birds podcast. I'm your host, Matt Weyrich, alongside Sam Cohn, here in our brand spanking new studio for the first time. I know you've recorded a few episodes from in here, but first time we're able to sit down in here and do it together. I'm liking the digs, man. It's looking good in here.
I was going to say that I don't really feel different being in here because I think of the three or four episodes I've done, most of them have been sitting right here against this wall, but it's nice to see you in person. And if you say something smart, I can give you a pat on the back, or I can give you a fist bump.
That's what I needed. We
can be in person and do this, so it's good to be here.
Well, last time I was here,
happy to have you back too.
Thank you. Yes, just flew back in yesterday or 2 days ago for those listening. So getting settled back in here in Baltimore, 2 weeks until opening day, just about. So
clock's ticking.
The clock is indeed ticking. We still got our trusty Josh Tolentino down in Sarasota, along with Jake Calvin-Meyer, my colleague there. So plenty of coverage still from the Sun from spring training, and we'll talk some Orioles in a bit. But obviously, the big news of the weekend was Maxx Crosby being acquired by the Ravens. 2 first-round picks going Las Vegas's way, blockbuster deal. Sam and Josh broke down all of that on the emergency episode over the weekend. They did great jumping in, I'm sure.
Recording at like 11 o'clock at night. I was thinking on my way here, I was like, I hope I look a little bit more presentable for this episode, because Josh and I were certainly a bit disheveled. I know you guys were, and I want to hear your side of the story that Josh told the other night, but you guys had a long day of working and were out having a drink when this happened. I was getting ready to go to bed shortly, and then had to kind of spring up and go do an episode. So it's big news. And I also want to give a shout out to Josh, because in the column that he wrote that night that came out the next morning, I like the way he worded that Steve Bisciotti had talked about at his end of season presser, this idea that he had trust in Eric DeCosta to hit singles and doubles and to put the ball in play and to take the good with the bad and everything he'd done. And Josh was like, he stepped up to the plate and put it over the fence. So it was a big night, and I want to hear your take or the Spark Notes version of your night and how you found out.
Yeah, as Josh talked about on the emergency episode, we were hanging out with a few colleagues and friends and watching the Team USA first game of WBC, and I pull out my phone and I see the news, and I'm looking around and nobody else around me is on their phone. No one's seen it yet. So, you have that moment where you're like, man, I'm Adam Schefter right now. Go around tapping everyone on the shoulder, showing it to them. Everyone's jaws just dropping. We had a few Ravens fans around us. They were going crazy. So, it was really cool to kind of see that happen in real time. And Josh, of course, he's hanging out for a second, and he's like, man, I actually got to go.
Yeah.
Just dips out within like 5 minutes. Yeah. So he got going. I followed about a half hour later, and it was a full pedal to the metal after that. So certainly a statement move for the Ravens, one hell of a way to kick off what is a crucial offseason for this team, coming off of a lack of a playoff appearance and making a coaching change, and now making a big change on the defensive side. So we obviously already unpacked the Crosby trade and what he brings to the defensive front, but I wanted to look at 5 lingering questions now as we kind of look ahead to what this trade meant for the rest of the roster. Mm-hmm. So first of all, what are the salary cap implications, Sam, for this team? Obviously, it's a huge cap hit for Crosby coming in, but they are able to restructure it?
Yeah, so there's a chance that they can take. He's making a lot of money. As has been well reported, he signed the largest non-quarterback contract just almost exactly a year ago. The largest contract of any NFL player not playing quarterback. And then 4 days later, he was usurped by, pretty sure it was Myles Garrett. So he makes a lot of money. His $30.69 million cap hit in 2026. Spotrac says that can be lowered to $7.73 million. I think what we're going to see as the deal becomes official in the next couple days, I think once we get to Wednesday and free agency officially opens, that deal will become official. And we're going to get into all this, but you think about Lamar Jackson's contract restructuring, what they do with Tyler Linderbaum, like they have some salary cap gymnastics to play through to figure out what that number is going to look like for Maxx Crosby, whether they want to push some money down the road and whether or not they see this as something that they can really buy in now and play the long-term game on this contract and move some money around to make it make sense, because everything about this deal says, hey, we want to build a team that can win right now.
Yeah, effective cap space after signing Tyler Huntley. Ravens over the cap by over $18 million, so certainly need to do something just to create space to have a qualifying salary cap figure for next season. And obviously there are lots of moves that the team is going to have to make this offseason. So certainly, you look at Lamar's contract. We've talked about that ad nauseum of how they're going to have to pull that cap hit down. Maybe that's an extension. Maybe that's a restructure. We'll see. I think that the Marlon Humphrey thing is interesting coming off of the year that he has, if he's amenable to working something out there. And Roquan Smith is the other one who, I honestly wouldn't mind extending him a couple more years and moving some of the figures around that way. And that actually can lower it, I think, a little bit more than a simple restructure. So certainly those things are all going to be on Eric DeCosta's radar. But it's certainly the math is going to be some gymnastics that they have to do here.
They got a lot of guys they got to pay. Notably, they extended Mark Andrews and they extended Kyle Hamilton, made Kyle Hamilton the highest paid safety in the league. The assumption is that they're not going to be, that Isaiah Likely is probably going to be going elsewhere. Perhaps they re-sign Charlie Kohler for a shorter deal, but in terms of the money, but they're looking at picking up Zay Flowers' fifth-year option, which is a good chunk of money. You mentioned Roquan Smith, who maybe in a year they part ways with if they don't see the money working out because they have so many guys they have to figure out how they're going to pay. Marlon Humphrey could potentially restructure for this to be a prove-it year for him. Maybe he takes a lesser deal with more backed with more incentives. They're going to have to figure out Nnamdi Madubuike's figure out how to pay Nnamdi Madubuike, who signed a lucrative deal, and his situation is a little murky. But as Josh and I had touched on the emergency pod, the timing was interesting, hilarious, and exciting for Ravens fans because it was within an hour or two of, within an hour or two of the Maxx Crosby deal being announced. There's some signs of hope for Nnamdi Madubuike that he could be ready to go. Just a video of him working out in a gym. So they got a handful of guys, and I guess at the end of the day, this is a good problem to have. You have a lot of guys who deserve to be paid a lot of money, but it's something they're going to have to figure out. And Maxx Crosby coming in with so much money on the table is one of the biggest challenges they're going to have to face to figure out how to capitalize with this team and have so many guys that are deserving of that kind of money.
Yep, and that's going to come down to the front office to navigate those murky waters, which brings me to my next question. Who is under the most pressure now heading into 2026? Is it Eric DeCosta pushing all the chips into this table? Is it Jesse Minter first year? Who are you kind of zeroing in on?
I think it's Jesse Minter. I like that, again, just to give a shout out to Josh, the column that he wrote about this is Eric DeCosta realizing that his seat, the temperature is turning up a little bit, and he realizes what they need to do and that they need to win soon. By doing a deal like this, I mean, we heard Steve Bisciotti say that the next coach, and at that point we didn't know who it was going to be, this next hypothetical coach, hey, you have 5 years was sort of the number that he laid out in terms of the pressure to go win. And they're bought a couple years with this Crosby deal, but I think it's Jesse Minter because he's coming in with a loaded roster. They were a team that was expected to make the Super Bowl coming into last year, and they failed tremendously. Coming into this year, before the deal, they were a team that was still like, okay, they have the talent, the roster, the capabilities, and on paper, the coaching staff to have a get-right year, to get back to the playoffs, and to maybe make a run. And the hope was like, okay, if they can beef up something on the offensive line and the defensive line, if they can fill in the trenches, they still have all the talent to make that kind of run. But now Eric DeCosta pushing all his chips on the table, he's looking at a first-year coach and saying, go do this. I'm giving you the pieces. We're going to figure out, like we were just talking about, the salary cap situation, them having to figure out how to pay all these guys. Eric DeCosta is saying, we're going to figure this out. I'm going to give you enough talent to go do it. You have to make the most of it. And that's a lot of pressure on a first-year coach because this was something that, again, Bisciotti and DeCosta acknowledged of like, yeah, he's a first-year coach. We're not expecting him to come in year one, guns a-blazing, but we know that the reason they hired him is because they had the faith and the belief that he could do that he could be a Mike McDonald, who he's been compared to ad nauseum, who won a Super Bowl 2 years into his tenure in Seattle. Mike Vrabel gets to the Super Bowl in his first year in New England. Granted, he had head coaching experience, but the point being that with the right roster and the right guy, you can get there quickly. And I'm going with Jesse Minter just because it's all there for him. There were so many conversations last year about how good they were on paper and they couldn't do it. They're even better on paper. I got a text from a buddy of mine from home, shortly after the trade happened, the Maxx Crosby trade went through, and he was like, this is the best team on paper. And I was saying, that's what they were saying last year. This is the best team on paper in 2025. They're even better in 2026.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tough to look at a first-year head coach and say, you have to make an AFC Championship game, because that basically is what the expectation is for this team. I think Jesse Minter knew that when he was stepping into it. We had talked before, maybe there was going to be a bit of a runway for him. 1 year, they figure it out. But look, you're only going to have so many years of Lamar Jackson at the top of his game. You can't really afford to take any kind of years off in that window. You're seeing that with the Bengals and with the Bills, even with their interesting salary cap situations, they're still not exactly hitting the reset button like we've seen some teams do without a true star quarterback at that position. So I get it. I do wonder, though, I don't think Jesse Minter is in danger of being fired if the season doesn't go, the way. He's going to get at least some kind of a leash there to make mistakes, to learn. He has a familiarity with the organization that's going to help him, obviously. But I do think that if you look at this roster in the front office and the coaching staff, DeCostas, to me, is the one who has the most. I mean, like you said, his seat is getting a little bit warm. Could he be fired if things go awry this year and they don't make the playoffs? I mean, when you make a coaching change, it is kind of the all right, I'm shifting everything. The onus is on me now. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that on the baseball side with Mike Elias. I think we're kind of seeing it a little bit for the Ravens of just you look at this team, and if you have to point the finger of who to blame, it might have to be Eric DeCosta, because there quite simply might not be anybody else who's been around it long enough.
Completely agree. I don't think it's a one-year thing. I think what you're looking at is Eric DeCosta has a collection of talent on the roster that he has built, and what's happening is they're either going to make or win a Super Bowl with this group in the next 2 to 3 years, or he's not going to have a job, and maybe Jesse Minter doesn't have a job, and maybe Steve Bisciotti in 5 to 10 years says, we did our best. And he acknowledged he's not doing this forever. He doesn't want to be doing this in 10 to 15 years. So I think, you'd put this in our doc. I think you talked about it before we jumped on too, but Eric DeCosta's pushing his chips in on Lamar, Derrick Henry, Ronnie Stanley, Maxx Crosby. All these guys are late 20s, early 30s. Mm-hmm.
It's not a young team.
There's not, and first positions vary. Derrick Henry is a marvel at the post-30 running back, still one of the best in the league, if not the best running back in the league, putting up just insane numbers. But that's not going to last forever. The window is shrinking, and yes, Eric DeCosta is giving them tools. It's up to Jesse Minter, because if they don't do this in the next 2 to 3 years, the reset button is going to be hit at some point, because they're going to lose some of these guys, and they're going to have already put so much money invested into top flight guys. They have to figure out a way to do this in the next 1 to 3 years. And by striking this deal, you're looking at, okay, Lamar is still, assuming he's back to full health, can still be at the peak of his powers. Declan Doyle said he still thinks Lamar's ceiling, he hasn't even touched his ceiling yet. Derrick Henry has not fallen off yet. If you can get an offensive line to block for him, the window is short, and the amount of talent that they're investing into this team is quite impressive, as we were saying before, on paper, but unfortunately football is played on grass.
Yep, and DeCosta doing what I think is one of the most difficult things to do in all of sports is trying to keep a competitive window open.
Yeah.
You can't hit the reset button and draft at the top of the draft, and especially now that they've traded each of their next 2 first-round picks, they're all in on these next 2 years.
Exactly.
So they're going to have to do it in a way that we haven't seen the Ravens do it in a long time, and that's having to spend in free agency and add things that way, maybe not being able to rely on your draft picks as much. So
maybe an easy, simple question, but I'm curious, just 1 to 10, how shocked were you that the Ravens gave up 2 draft picks for this deal? Because I will say, just really quickly, I told you before we jumped on, I did a radio hit earlier on the day. This was it Friday was the deal?
Yes.
Yeah, Friday night.
Friday night.
Did a radio hit earlier in the day, and I was asked, do you think they get this deal done with Maxx Crosby? And I was like, I just really don't see a way that they, this is just not, it's so out of character for what they have been, and signals a real step into this new world that Jesse Minter has talked about, the idea of a new age of playing like a Raven, and Eric DeCosta is showing that he's willing to mold and be different. I mean, 1 to 10, how shocked were you that they were willing to give up not 1 but 2 first-round draft picks for a guy like Maxx Crosby?
Incredibly shocked. I mean, I thought maybe they'd try to find a way to get Trey Hendrickson in free agency, working on some kind of deal there, because we've heard Eric DeCosta talk about being willing to spend, and I thought maybe that was what they'd be kind of willing to do is spend in a way that they hadn't before. But for them to deal 2 first-round picks for an organization that has prided itself on drafting and developing and doing things the Raven way, I mean, it is clear that they're learning from what we saw this past year. And that's honestly, I think, the most encouraging thing to see is just when things aren't working, when you feel like things have stagnated, shake it up. And that's exactly what they did. It's a big gamble, certainly. This deal, I mean, I think Maxx Crosby is going to deliver his end. There's no really worry for me on that end. But not having those 2 picks when you're already in the Caps kind of hell situation that you're in now is certainly going to be a gamble, in that you need the rest of your roster to continue to either develop or play at the level that you expect them to throughout the terms of the deal, so that you don't get burned on the back end.
It's funny how Eric DeCosta, I don't want to say like talks out of both sides of his mouth, but he kind of plays both sides, where he said at the Combine, we pride ourselves, as you said, we pride ourselves on being a draft and develop team. Like, that is the core of who the Ravens are. That is who they've always been, and that is who they will continue to be. And then the other side says that they expect to be active participants to take a big swing in free agency. And when you find the middle ground, you mentioned Trey Hendrickson. I think him and Jonathan Greenard from Minnesota, it was like, the Ravens are the kind of team who are going to take swings on tier 2 guys, and that's a big swing by the Ravens standards. And the other thing I'll just say about this is that we had the conversation a couple weeks ago. I think it might have been our first episode, just the idea that the Ravens needed to spend money if they were going to be a contender. We spoke just after the Super Bowl about how the Seahawks and the Patriots, they spent so much money in free agency. Eric DeCosta, it's your turn. Go do it. If you want to go win a Super Bowl, go spend some money. And by all accounts, this is sort of the same thing. He spent capital. He spent money. He spent draft capital in replacement of spending money, but he spent. He spent because he knows that this is a guy who can come in and make a difference and go get them to the Super Bowl. And as Maxx Crosby said in the video we posted on social media, which you can read more about at BaltimoreSun.com.
And he is certainly going to cost them money as well. So the draft picks and money, even if they can restructure his contract a little bit. So let's move on. My third question here, and then speaking of spending money, Tyler Linderbaum. I mean, is he as good as gone at this point?
It's hard to see him coming back. The whole market-setting deal, I think that they gave him a number that would, as DeCosta said, reset the market. They gave him a generous offer, and Tyler Linderbaum, who's had a great experience in Baltimore, knows that he can probably go make money elsewhere. There was reporting that came out today that there are a couple sharks in the water that have gone even further above that number. So market setting at the time of DeCosta saying that was anything above 18 million. And there are several teams in the mix who are looking at 20 plus million. So we don't know, and we're probably not going to ever know the number that DeCosta fed to Linderbaum's agent, but I think there's a realistic possibility that he's going to make way more money than the Ravens are willing to pay an offensive lineman elsewhere. And
that's what free agency is. Like, it's open market. It's going to eventually, that more often than not, these market resetting deals come in free agency because teams are motivated to go above what they might, really have a number set for. And, the Ravens do have some leverage here of being like, hey, we have other moves we need to make. If you play a non-premium position, we were willing to go the distance and reset the market here, which is a generous offer from our end. But at the end of the day, we have other needs, and if we have to set a hard line, and if you're not going to be able to do that, then we're going to have to go our other separate ways. And like you said, I mean, I do feel like at this point it is difficult to see him coming back with just all the needs that the Ravens have throughout the roster.
Yeah, if you're Linderbaum, you can look at the Baltimore and say, this is probably my best chance to win a Super Bowl at this point in my career. If he goes to Las Vegas, you're not looking at the Raiders. And granted, maybe Mendoza is everything he's chalked up to be, and that team is competing for a title in the next couple of years. But if he wants to win now, his best opportunity is by taking less money in Baltimore. That said, you will never fault someone for making the most money they can in a career that doesn't last very long. and he's playing in the not for long league. If he can go make a lot of money, you'll never fault someone for doing that. So
he said all the right things. Like, he's been played like a Raven. I think he's embodied that in a lot of ways for the offensive line, especially amid the group that they've had. He's had to take on additional responsibilities in the middle of that line.
Yep.
And maybe his numbers suffered a little bit for it for last year. So it's one of those things you just kind of wish him well and move on.
Definitely. The hard part is because the Ravens gave up those 2 draft picks, now they don't have a first-round pick to go get an offensive lineman. And, of course, there were different positional needs they were looking at. Obviously, they're not going to go for an edge rusher in the early draft because they got Crosby. But for the last couple of weeks, the way I've been looking at it is like they probably should address, if you can get an offensive lineman first and get a edge rusher in free agency, great. The problem is now they can't do that, and the talent drop-off from the first round to the second round is going to be pretty steep. They can't get a Vengo Ioane or a Spencer Fano from Utah. Like, they can't get a premier top-of-the-line offensive lineman to backfill when you lose one of your most consistent stout run blockers. So they're going to have to find other ways, whether that's in free agency or later in the draft. But it opens a whole other can of worms about questions about positional needs and such.
Yeah, and that leads into my next question of where do you feel like the Ravens' top priorities are now with edge rusher all but checked off at this point? Maybe they have a depth signing or something like that. But with the rest of this roster, we've talked a lot about the different needs that they have. Cap space is now at a premium. Their draft picks are not going to be as high, having no first rounder, and not even being able to trade future draft picks now for guys because you don't really want to give up any more picks in that 2027 draft or even the 2026 draft, considering you don't have your first rounder and the way that the Ravens have operated in years past. What do you feel like are their top priorities, and how should they kind of address this?
It's got to be the interior offensive line. They cannot go into next season, especially if you don't have Linderbaum. Like, you have to find a difference maker, even if it's not the Maxx Crosby equivalent. Like, that's just not going to happen. That's not realistic. But you have to find someone who can be an immediate starter and an immediate difference maker to fill one of those holes. It's unreasonable, and this was a conversation that was had throughout all of last season of, like, you can't expect a team to have 5 unbelievable all-pro, Pro Bowl level offensive linemen, but you have 2 proven tackles, probably going to end up with a new center, and you're looking to replace 2 guard spots. The thing to remember is that maybe when Emory Jones comes back healthy in camp, at the end of the summer, that there's a lot more confidence that he's ready to take on that role, which he was not in his rookie year. But that sophomore jump could be real. And then, okay, you're looking to either get the other guard spot or a center that you feel like can be an immediate starter or difference maker, because that is the whole point of like this investing. Like, there's other holes they have to fill, and this is if edge rushing was 1A, offensive line is 1B, and then we have cornerback and receiver, and is Charlie Kohler the number 2 tight end, or did they want to bring in someone else behind Mark Andrews? Like, there's other area. I'm sure they'd love to have a third safety to do a little bit of what Jesse Minter was doing in Los Angeles, but like, these are all wants. The other need is the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the group that you had last year and how much Lamar Jackson was having to run for his life. I mean, Lamar is undoubtedly your most important asset for this team, and you don't really want to see that from your franchise guy of constantly having to break out of the pocket. It disrupts the whole offense. Yes, are the pass catching group behind Zay Flowers underwhelming? Absolutely. But if Lamar isn't going to have time to get them the ball, it's not really going to matter a whole lot. Of who's going to be downfield. So certainly, I think that wide receiver is an important need for this team.
Yeah.
Getting even like a Juwan Jennings type, I think, would be really interesting for this group. A big body guy who can go up and get it. But I agree that the interior offensive line probably at this point, especially now that it's clear that Linderbaum probably is going to be moving on. I mean, you've got to get some new names into that mix.
And Rashad Bateman had a good breakout year 2 seasons ago. He was sort of lost in the offense this past year. And who knows, maybe under Declan Doyle, this sort of new chance, there's a new opportunity for him to really break out. But yes, you do want that kind of big body, classic X receiver to open things up for Zay Flowers, and Rashad Bateman's just not that guy. So if you can get, they're one receiver away, but this has been so much of the conversation for how many years? Lamar. Okay, quick aside. I hate this argument. People have said for years, Lamar just needs one more pass catcher. Lamar just is one guy away. The argument about like, I would take this team's top 2 receivers over Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. But look at what they had last year, and they couldn't do it. If you have Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely and DeAndre Hopkins, you don't need just those 5 guys. That is the definition of filling the 2 spots in the aggregate of 5. Like, that is enough to be a championship contending team. Those 5 guys can get you to where you need to go in an offense when your quarterback is Lamar Jackson. So do I think they need to go get a superstar big name? They're probably not going to, but I don't think that's necessarily the need right now. I do think they address it in some capacity. I think they bring in someone else, whether that's you mentioned Juwan Jennings, whether that's like a tier 2 guy in free agency, a veteran, a la Odell, DeAndre, like they've done this for a couple of years. They bring in some, but utilize what you have in a way that they had so many options. I don't think that argument played well last year when you had so many pass catchers who were proven and could do things. Because Isaiah Likely was the 4th or 5th option for Lamar Jackson, and he had arguably the biggest catch. Granted, he had a nightmare season for a while and 2 brutal weeks, but if Tyler Loop makes that kick, he had the biggest catch of the season, which is that 4th down play to set up the kick. So you had proven guys. I think they need to get someone else, but the point I'm trying to make is that they don't necessarily need A.J. Brown. Like what they had last year was
I just
enough.
think a little bit of consistency would go a long way. I feel like each of those guys has had plenty of moments and then just will disappear in the offense. And sometimes it's game planning. Sometimes they're not getting the ball thrown their way. But, a difference-making wide receiver who your offense can be built around as opposed to fitting pieces in for different schematical reasons, I think just would make this offense. I'm not going to say the Ravens have been one-dimensional because certainly they are not when they have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. But adding that, like I said, big-bodied receiver, I think does just kind of change the dynamics a little bit of, okay, corner has to give a little bit more respect on the outside. They are going to maybe have to bracket with the safety a little bit more. That'll open things up over the middle of the field. Maybe Mark Andrews is able to have a bigger year. There's a lot of domino effects that can happen when you get a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. At the end of his career, isn't the DeAndre Hopkins of old. He's not. He had his moments, like I said.
But also look at the way he produced, because they weren't throwing him the ball. Look at the way he produced. I mean,
but you got to get open.
Yeah, I hear you.
And he's not the route runner that he used to be at all.
Sure.
And that there's
yes, but he can also make a one-handed catch in double coverage. Still,
sure,
he did that last year.
He definitely did.
So
yeah. Last question for you.
Yeah.
Looking at this edge rushing group that they had 3 edge rushers that they have hitting free agency this offseason. Walk me through each of those 3 guys, what you kind of expect for their market this year, and do you think there's a chance for any of those 3 guys to come back?
Most of the group, I'm just going to say no. David Ojabo has not been able to find his footing health-wise and in the rotation since they drafted him. That's a guy you look at and say it's not going to work out here. It's just not going to happen. The best thing for his career is to get a fresh start somewhere else. Kyle Van Noy, 2 years ago, was their best pass rusher, had a career year, and his age is showing. Father time comes for everybody at some point or another. There's going to come a day, Matt, where you and I are too old to podcast. And I hope it doesn't come soon.
Yeah.
Hope not anytime soon. But it comes for everybody. And I think Kyle Van Noy is as aware of that as anybody. He pleaded for himself to want to come back. Locker room clean out, he talked about his biggest goal this offseason was just to be a Raven next year. He's at the point in his career where he just wants to keep playing, and he's willing to give his all no matter what that looks like. From the Ravens side, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Even if you're limiting snaps and getting him as kind of a rotational guy, you don't think that
you got to pay him a real minimum to bring him back. But they have issues to solve elsewhere. And if you can bring back Draymond Jones, he was the Ravens' most productive edge rusher for most of last year. That's not saying a lot, but he was their most productive guy. He did bring a little bit of juice, even if it wasn't always the most consistent. So for the right price, if you can have that group on the outside be Maxx Crosby and Mike Green and Draymond Jones, I think you're excited about that group. Am I missing anyone? I think it was just those 3. So I think if you can get Draymond Jones at the right price, the Ravens would love to bring him back. I just don't know if it's a possibility. And again, it comes back to the salary cap gymnastics. But Draymond Jones said he'd be happy to come back. But it's just a matter if he's ready to go into free agency and see what he can get, because he did play well enough to go into the open market and get himself some money. not Maxx Crosby type money by any stretch. But he's said he's happy to go into the market and see what he can get.
Yep, and the legal tampering period begins today at noon, and free agency officially will kick off 4 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. We will have our next episode Thursday, so plenty to talk about that day on the Ravens side. I'm sure
back in here?
We'll be back in here, baby. So
Sweet.
Looking forward to that for sure. We're going to go ahead and wrap there on Ravens and talk Orioles. Introducing a little new segment. I'm excited.
Heyo.
Right after this.
What if you settle your accident case too soon, only to realize you left thousands, even millions on the table? At Rice Law, we fight for every dollar you deserve. Don't settle for less. Get the right lawyer right now.
Rice Law. Best advice, call Rice.
If you would like what you're hearing on Early Birds podcast, you should definitely sign up for the Baltimore Sun's free sports newsletter sent right to your email. We are in the locker room, the clubhouse, at practice, and at every single game, talking to our sources and observing all of this information that we put into Baltimore Sun's weekly Orioles Insider and Ravens Insider newsletters. Sign up for free at baltimoresun.com/newsletters.
And we're back. Like we said, new segment for you guys. Really excited about this. We're introducing today the Chirp Meter, and those who are going to be watching on YouTube will get the added benefit of seeing a little graphic we put together.
Literally just going to ask, do you have like a bunch of birds flying over the screen?
Oh man, now you're putting pressure on me. I've started making the graphic,
Okay.
But coming together post-release, maybe I can get some birds in there. I mean,
Okay.
we have birds.
Sure.
We're early birds. We should have some birds.
I would hope so.
But yeah, the Chirp Meter is going to be a hopefully recurring segment where we basically zone in on just how much we're pining for one of the two teams, Orioles, Ravens, to do something. And what we're going to talk about today is extension candidates. It's spring training. It's prime time of the baseball calendar to work out extensions. Offseason is pretty much over. I saw that on the MLB Trade Rumors top 50 free agents. Only 2 now are left of the entire top 50. So pretty much every major free agent has landed with the team. The Orioles roster appears pretty set. So if the Orioles are going to work out any extensions this year, this is kind of the time to do it. So we're going to kind of run through a few of the guys who are going to be hitting free agency over the next few years. And here's how the Chirp Meter works. From 0 to 2, if you 0 being the least interested you are in a guy signing an extension, and 10 being the most interested, 0 to 2 will be peeping. Peeping is kind of like light bird noises. 3 to 5, chirping. 6 to 8 is squawking, and then if you are really screeching for the Orioles to sign this guy to an extension, that is 9 to 10 on the Chirp Meter. So those will be our parameters.
And if you're watching on YouTube, we'll have a graphic somewhere in the middle here.
Yeah,
that you can
we'll
see.
have a little number thing moving around. Yeah. So let's start with Trevor Rogers, who is maybe the most pressing of the guys on this team, as he is a pending free agent after 2026. Sam, where do you
11.
sit? 11. You're above screeching.
Yes, I think it's easy to say screeching. As long as he's healthy, you do not let that man leave. He was so good for them near the end of last year, and I think the confidence is sky high for what he can do this coming season. There are a couple other guys we're going to talk about that have produced well enough to warrant contract extensions. There are guys who have a little bit murkier health history that can raise concerns. I think Trevor Rogers on the list, especially as a pitcher, they know what they have in him and what he can be, and the expectations are so high. If you can keep that man in Baltimore, you absolutely should.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I'm also screeching,
Okay.
first of all. But I think if you look at what the Orioles did this past offseason, they were on the hunt for starting pitching throughout the year, and even all the way up to the end of the offseason, we're looking at a lot of different guys for long-term deals. I mean, guys who, Framber Valdez signed for $30+ million. That is payroll space that conceivably the Orioles have because they were willing to sign these guys. So while they signed Chris Bassett $18.5 million for this year, they are still very much wide open for years beyond this. So if they can work out something with Trevor Rogers to kick in starting 2026, I have to think that spending ability is still there for this team. So I think that it is not only something that the Orioles need to do, considering that they have a rotation that lacks long-term proven options for this team, but also with the year that he had last year, there's still a little bit of element of having to prove himself right now. And if you were to wait until midseason or end of the year and he continues what he did last year, carries it over, and trust me, he's looked good in spring, I think there's a very good chance that he's going to be the Trevor Rogers we just saw. His market value is only going to go up. The closer a guy gets to free agency, the more likely they are going to want to test it. So it's kind of like we talked about during Ravens. Right now is the only time that the Orioles can negotiate with him. Nobody else can get in on that. So I think if there is a priority number one, it's probably Trevor Rogers.
I think you and Josh talked about this on an earlier episode, but like if you extend Trevor Rogers and if they name him the opening day starter, his jersey on March 26th, opening day, should go triple platinum.
Yeah.
I think Orioles fans should be ready to buy into him being a real piece of what they want to accomplish.
Also throws left-handed, and all their other starters are right-handed, so I think having him provide that element for the rotation would be a good thing. Let's look at Taylor Ward, and I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm chirping here, so I'm on the 3 to 5 meter, a little bit tepidly jumping into this, but I do think that Taylor Ward here, who they acquired in the trade with the Angels for Grayson Rodriguez, pending free agent as well, a guy who is coming off a 30-homer season, plays a good left field. I think that he was a really good fit for this team this year. They had a hole in the outfield. He kind of supplies it. And if they were to work out an extension now, he's entering his age 31 season, so a little bit on the older side. I don't know that you necessarily have to give him some lucrative long-term deal, but maybe you can work out something that gets him to 34, 35, solid power bat from the right side, which has been a bit of an imbalance for them. They've had a lot of lefties coming up through their system. I'm tepidly interested. You don't know how he's going to play at Camden Yards. The wall out there is not exactly conducive to his profile. Probably will take away a few home runs. But I do think that, coming off the year that he had, it's a career year, but there is a need for this outfield. You still don't know what Colton Cowser is going to be long term. Tyler O'Neill, coming off injury-plagued year, only signed for 2 more years. You have Dylan Beavers, you have Enrique Bradfield, certainly some options here as far as youth, but as far as proven major leaguers in that outfield, I don't think there's a whole lot that you can bank on long term.
I completely agree with everything you said. I went peeping cautiously. I'm sort of just like right behind you, but I think peeping, chirping, I'm kind of on that line a little bit, just because I don't think he needs to be someone. I think he's so far down the priority list long term. I think he's the kind of guy that a team brings in to help fill an immediate need, and the hope is that you squeeze as much juice out of him as you can in this season, and then realize that your Beavers and your Enrique Bradfield, et cetera, like that's your future. You're not looking at Taylor Ward as a long-term everyday starter. And granted, you mentioned like they don't need to sign him to some long-term deal. They could sign him for a short-term deal and that be all well and great. But I just think I put peeping just because I think it's further down the priority list, knowing that you have long-term positional solutions with other guys coming up, and I do have confidence that Colton Cowser figures it out. And so I think the outfield is a place where they don't need to make some long extension on a guy like Taylor Ward, who, again, coming off a career year at that, on the other side of 30 at that age, like I think you're closer to the decline than you are to the upswing.
We will see. We'll talk about Cowser in a minute, but first, let's go Adley Rutschman. Really polarizing player for Orioles fans right now. Obviously, coming off of a down season, injuries for the first time in his career. He's a free agent after 2027. Where are you at on the Adley Rutschman scale?
Okay, this is the one. I know I said I was like half peeping, half chirping, but I did put peeping for Taylor Ward. For Adley is the one guy I'm going to go with chirping / squawking.
Okay.
Maybe it's the nostalgia in me. I just find it hard to envision this team. And yes, he did not have the year that Orioles fans expected. He did not have the year last year that we expected and that he needs to have to be a long-term piece with this team. But I just don't see this team getting over the hump and getting in a deep playoff run without him. It's sort of like when or if the Orioles were to win a World Series in the next 3 years, the documentary has to start with Adley Rutschman scanning Camden Yards. First time, when he gets called up on the day of Preakness, like that's when the documentary has to start. And for the story to work out in their favor with everything that's changed and the core they have and the group they've brought in, again, like I'm fully playing into the nostalgia and I recognize that. But it just feels like this team, if they're going to win a World Series or gets the World Series, like he has to be the guy that they brought him in, that they drafted him to be, and he has to reach his full potential. And it's a heck of a story if he does. If he has, 2 down years and does figure it out and is an important piece of but he is in the fabric. He's also such a great guy, but he is in the fabric of this Orioles team. So I think if you're able to extend him long term, and he's able to live up to that, that's best case scenario. But I do fully understand the other side of that, where people are a little bit more skeptical and would rather the Orioles front office and decision makers shift money elsewhere into guys that they're a little bit more confident in. But the way I see it, he's so ingrained in what this team has been and can be, that I'm going chirping / squawking.
Man, I'm really on the opposite spectrum here. I'm peeping, and I almost feel like he's unextendable right now.
Okay.
Just because we're looking at a year and a half worth of Adley Rutschman playing below what Adley Rutschman is supposed to be.
Sure.
But also, you have signed Samuel Basallo, 8 years, $67 million, plays catcher, and you just locked up Pete Alonso at first base. So having them coexist as catchers,
it's going to be tough.
It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of work that out this year. They're certainly going to have to use the DH spot a lot to get them both playing time. That does block it from other guys being able to use it as much, so that kind of creates a tough roster fit for maybe further additions down the line. But I do think that this is a huge prove-it year for Adley Rutschman, and I don't think he's going to accept some kind of under market extension right now. The Orioles certainly aren't going to offer him some kind of over market extension right now, considering what we have seen from him over the last year and a half. But you also need to see what Basallo is. You need to see what he is behind the plate. Right now, he's very much a raw product, only 21 years old. Great throwing arm, but his skills behind the plate are still kind of a work in progress. His throwing into the outfield, I just watched him make an error the other day, skipping a throw past the second baseman into center field. These are things that he's going to have to iron out. He looked pretty good at first base, and I thought he was actually on track to be a pretty solid first baseman. I don't think we're going to see him there a whole lot. So really, how he looks behind the plate is going to be interesting. And of course, how he does at the plate as well. If he's able to live up to his expectations. Talked about this in the last episode, but Zips has him projected for 25 home runs this year, which would be an insane year for him to have, regardless of what the on-base percentage looks like. If he's able to hit for that kind of power right away, you're going to feel pretty good about that extension long term. But I think it's a prove-it year for Adley. It's a prove-it year for Basallo, just in terms of what he is going to be, what he's going to be able to build on with his first full season. So I don't feel like, where things stand in this spring training right now, I could be pushing the Orioles to sign Adley.
I completely agree. I think that's fair. I'm not saying extend him today, but as you said, prove it year, and the pressure is really on because of the last 2 years that he's had, and because the contingency plan is a couple lockers away from where he is. He understands where he is and where he's at, and I think the best case for the Orioles is being able to figure out how to make sure that Adley Rutschman, Pete Alonso, and Samuel Basallo are all playing a lot of baseball for you, because that's a lot of talent. And Adley Rutschman, obviously, the defense is there.
Yes, he made some huge strides defensively last year, particularly with his framing, which is even with ABS, still a very important skill to have. And to be exact, he's 2 lockers away from Samuel Basallo. And right between them is Chris Bassett, which I think is a fantastic guy to have between your 2 catchers. Bassett, man, he's doing wonders for this.
That's awesome.
Everything that we've talked about how Pete Alonso is doing for this clubhouse, Bassett's doing it on the pitching side.
Nice.
They're kind of in lockstep in how they view winning and the kind of tone that they set for this team. So I honestly, culture-wise, I think Bassett was a fantastic addition.
At some point, maybe we'll have the conversation about who is a better culture addition, Pete Alonso or Chris Bassett, but that's for another episode.
I always say, let's see where they're at in August when they're in a 5-game losing streak and everyone's asking the questions and are you going to figure it out?
Yeah.
That is the true test of what a guy brings to a clubhouse.
Who shows up to talk and face the cameras when things aren't great, and who says the right things, and who helps them get back on track.
Man, I miss Ryan O'Hearn, dude. That guy, he was the one who stepped up last year so often. Let's move on to Gunnar Henderson, the Team USA star, who 4 hits in his first game of pool play. For you listeners, that was 2 days ago. For us, it was yesterday. He is the face of this franchise. He is the true superstar in every sense of the word for this team. We saw a 9-WAR season from him in 2024, was dealing with some injuries last year that limited him, but still was able to rack up a career-high 30 stolen bases, plays a premium position at shortstop. Scott Boras is his agent.
Yep.
Where are you at on the chirp meter for Gunnar Henderson?
I see we both have screeching.
We both have screeching.
If it's possible, make it happen.
Blank check, right?
Blank check. if it's possible, do what you can. The Scott Boras factor makes things difficult because he's going to be commanding and demanding a lot of money, and there's going to be a lot of money on the table for him, and it will speak volumes to what this team. We had those conversations about. They went and got Pete Alonso, and this team was ready to, as we just talked about, like the Ravens had not been a team willing to take a swing, and they did it on Maxx Crosby. The Orioles were for so long a team that wasn't willing to take a swing, and they did it with Pete Alonso. This would be, with Gunnar, if they're willing to really give him a blank check, like that would be a real sign of the time shift in where they're going, if they're really willing to pay up and keep him around. And we had said before we started, like, let's make sure we talk about Gunnar Henderson when we start our Orioles segment, and we totally forgot because you mentioned the USA, his 4-hit performance the other night. Like, every Orioles fan's looking at that and saying, I can't wait for him to have that hit and jump up at second base and lose his SHIT at some point during the season in a big game for the Orioles. Like, that's what the Orioles are vying for. That's what they see in Gunnar Henderson, and the highs have been so high for him. The lows have been really frustrating. I guess when he walks, he chucks his bat, or chucks his helmet, but you know what I mean. But that's exactly who they need him to be. And in the same vein as we talked about, like, the ceiling is so high for Trevor Rogers. Like, Gunnar Henderson is everything to what this team can be, and they're winning. Their winning projection in a lot of ways, especially this year, kind of starts and stops with him.
Yeah, and you have to think that playing in the WBC is going to be great for him in terms of getting more experience on the big stage.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a huge conversation. As a super quick aside, that's a huge conversation in basketball. When you look at guys who play for Team USA in the Olympics and then come back, the numbers are really fascinating about guys who have that experience, both playing on that stage, but also spending time with guys at that level. How that translates. Celtics had 4 guys on Team USA, and they've been there. So you look at this experience, as you started to say, like that experience can be really big for what Gunnar Henderson can come back and do this season.
Yeah, and certainly the Orioles, having struggled on the playoff stage, still have yet to win a single game in the playoffs in this era under Mike Elias. So it's going to be a point of emphasis for them to, one, break that streak, but also to be able to go deep, to have a guy like Gunnar Henderson get the experience that he's getting, like you said, being in the locker room, clubhouse, with all of these superstars, being able to soak up as much as he can. It's invaluable. So while I do think that it's really, you wonder what a blank check looks like for Gunnar Henderson. The number starts with an 8.
Yeah.
It's got to be over $800 million. The record Juan Soto set with the Mets was 15 years, $765 million. And that is when he's hit free agency. If you were to sign Gunnar to an extension right now, you'd be also buying out his arbitration years when he is going to be setting some records there as well. He already's among the highest paid guys for the year of arbitration he's in 2026 in Orioles history. And now if you were to really say, okay, we're going to make you an Oriole for life, I really do think that that's going to have to start with $800+ million. And like you said, it's not even close to the realm of spending that the Orioles have ever reached before. This is a smaller market team. Are they really going to be able to pay that much? I mean, talk about an enduring legacy for David Rubenstein if they do make that happen. But I do think that while I'm putting it at screeching, my likelihood meter is very much down low.
David Rubenstein loves to invest money in history documentaries, and he's a real fondness for history and learning about where we've been as human civilization. What he could be doing here is investing in history for the Orioles in a World Series.
And I've asked him before, like, what do you want your legacy to be in Baltimore? And he told me that he wants people to think that this was a philanthropic effort for him, that he was giving back to Baltimore. And what better way to give back than to lock up, than it's not second coming of Cal Ripken because they're different players, but the guy who is taking basically the mantle that Cal had for those really good years of Orioles baseball, the face of the franchise, Hall of Famer, and now, this is an organization like the Ravens that has prided itself on drafting and developing guys. Homegrown players are so more often the face of the Orioles as opposed to bringing in big free agents, Pete Alonso notwithstanding, that to do it again, to have this new generation of Orioles fans be able to have their guy that is locked up long term and is the face of the franchise player that they can kind of take pride in and have a jersey that lasts forever. You don't have to burn it when he signs with the Yankees in 5 years. I think that would mean so much to the city and so much to the fan base.
Quick question for you, just wrapping up Gunnar. I totally forgot where I was going with that.
It's okay. We can move on because we still have 4 names left.
Wait, sorry, I remember.
Oh, you remember.
Quick question for you on Gunnar Henderson. He was someone who, again, we talked a minute ago about how like the highs were so high. And do you see? We still don't super know what Albie is going to be for this team. We have to see it in real time as the season progresses, and it'll be a conversation that we're covering and talking about. Do you feel like that Craig Albernaz's energy of like just being so, for lack of a better term, like for the boys, like he's such a like he knows how to connect with guys in a way that's so different from, you talked to Brandon Hyde a couple days ago, like he just brings such a different energy that maybe there's some relaxed mixed with pushing for guys to like chirp each other and to, pun intended, I guess, pushing for guys to help one another. Do you feel like Albie's energy really is what Gunnar needs as we see it and know it right now? Is that fair to say?
I think the big message that Albernaz keeps pushing is that he's trying to let guys be them.
Yeah.
Like, if your style of play is to show up an opposing team and bring energy and fire, like that is probably going to let you get away with that a little bit. There are some managers who might try to temper those kinds of things. And Gunnar Henderson, as we saw, in that game against Great Britain, sliding into second base, helmet goes flying, he's banging his head with his hand. Like, that's the kind of energy that Gunnar Henderson plays with. And not to say that Brandon Hyde was necessarily like holding him back in any way.
Yes.
But I do think that the relaxed mentality that Craig Albernaz has, but also the high standard of energy and competitiveness and intent. Intent is a big word that keeps getting thrown around with this coaching staff, of guys being intentful with what they are doing on a day-to-day basis, making sure that they aren't taking reps off and things like that. I think that also is going to help kind of raise the baseline for a lot of these guys of making sure that things that happen in spring don't become problems, throughout the year. I mean, this is a team that was doing PFPs in the middle of the year, which is typically a spring training drill. You think that the fundamentals aren't really needed in July, but they were, felt like they had to do it in infield drills and things like that too. So if they're able to kind of clean up some of those things now, I think that does help a guy like Gunnar Henderson.
Just a thought. We have a couple more. We can kind of rapid fire through some of these.
Yeah. Kyle Bradish.
Yeah, you go first.
Kyle Bradish. I'm squawking. All right, that's pretty high up on the meter here in the 6 to 8 range. And I think, honestly, right now could be the best time to buy low on Kyle Bradish. Ace caliber pitcher when healthy over the past 3 seasons. That hasn't been very often, but it really was just one injury. It was one injury that basically wiped out 2 full seasons, unfortunately. Only got a handful of starts in each. But even when he was on the field, pitching through pain in 2024, strikeout numbers were fantastic. The velo has been great. I think he has some of the filthiest stuff on this pitching staff. Shane Baz coming in and making maybe some waves there on that end. But I do think that Bradish is going to be the pitcher in 2026 who has the best year for the Orioles. And that's saying a lot with what we saw from Trevor Rogers last year. But I do think that talent alone, Kyle Bradish is that guy. And, you look at the kind of dice rolls that you have to do when starting pitchers. You always don't love, the injury track record, but also the track record of guys getting Tommy John twice these days. Still not very high.
Yeah.
Kind of once you do it, you're usually in good shape to not have to do it again. So while he's going to have to build up his innings this year, I think we're going to see the Kyle Bradish of old in 2026, and I certainly would want to pay the rate that maybe there is now as opposed to the one that would be after this year.
Completely agree.
There we go.
Jordan Westburg.
We're both squawking.
Yeah.
Jordan Westburg, I'm chirping.
Okay, I'm peeping.
You're peeping, so you're all the way kind of out for right now.
I just think right now.
Yeah.
I think doing it right now is such a high-risk play that feels not worth it. I think if you're looking at who you can extend now, where you can move your money, Jordan Westburg, and we've talked about this, like is such a valuable member of this team and the success that they can have. I just think the idea of extending him right now when there's so many question marks, especially the fact that he didn't get Tommy John, he did get
the UCL,
yes.
PFP,
PRP. That was like PCP,
platelet-rich
PFP.
plasma. Yeah.
Yes.
I said PFPs earlier. Had me thrown for a loop.
Yeah. So the fact that he did get the injections, like you don't necessarily know exactly how this is going to play out, and when you're managing that kind of money, I just don't. I just think it's too high risk of a play as we stand today. But ask me again in 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that for the most part, a lot of Westbrook injuries have kind of been freak accidents. This is something that has been bothering him for years. So that he's getting the injection now, maybe it kind of clears that up and the elbow isn't a problem anymore. But I get it, and I'm still, tepid here with chirping. The only thing I will say is that the Orioles' record when Jordan Westburg has been on the field versus when he hasn't has been drastic. And it's not. There's never one player can truly make that big of a difference where their entire winning depends on them, unless you're Shohei Ohtani and you're doing both sides of the ball.
Sure.
But I do think that Westburg is really important for this team. He is a big but leadership presence, despite not being a veteran in that clubhouse, and also plays a very good third base. So I would be interested, but again, Scott Boras client, you never really know about those guys.
We are on the same page on Colton Cowser.
We are both peeping.
Yeah.
Not interested at this point. I mean, we need to see more from Colton Cowser.
Yeah.
Had a great rookie season, but still had underlying numbers with that year that suggested there was going to be some aggression. He obviously deals with injuries last year, really dating back to the playoffs when he broke his hand swinging through a strikeout against the Kansas City Royals. Since then, has just had injury after injury. Playing through multiple things last year. He breaks his thumb in the first season of the series of the year. But also the strikeouts. The strikeouts need to come down. Over a 30% rate. Over the past 2 seasons, he has the highest strikeout rate for a player with his many plate appearances in baseball. It's just not sustainable. It's not something that, especially given that he really struggles against lefties, is he eventually going to become a platoon bat? I don't know. He's also moving into center field for the first time in his career to play full time. So how that looks over an extended period of time is also up in the air. Just got to see more from Colton Cowser.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is my thinking with Colton Cowser is the same as it is with Jordan Westburg for different reason. Just need to see a little bit more.
Yeah. And last one.
Before I take that step, before I'm ready to.
Last one here is Jackson Holliday. And again, we're on the same page here. We are squawking. Jackson Holliday, a free agent after the 2030 season, so plenty of time here to work out an extension. Another Scott Boras client, a recurring theme here, and obviously a guy who comes from a family in baseball, a lot of money there. Maybe he wants to make his own money. Maybe he's not necessarily worried about it because there's family money. I don't know. Those situations are always unique to each individual guy. But for Jackson, we haven't seen yet the full iteration of what Jackson Holliday could be. He took a step forward last year with 17 home runs, a solid steal count. I think 2020 is certainly within range for him. He said on a separate podcast, Exit 52, shout out those guys, said that he was aiming for 30-30 this year before the hamate bone broke. So, I think that those kinds of seasons are certainly in play for him. I really like the talent. We haven't seen him put it together yet, but I definitely am a big believer in the long-term potential of Jackson Holliday.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I have here squawking, please. Just because, as you said, don't rush it. We got plenty of time to figure that out. He's someone who is going to be up for a lot of money, but I just think that his career trajectory is such like this that if you can get it at the right time, at the right price, and with a guy like Scott Boras is going to play it, wait until he can squeeze out the most money possible, and the odds of them being able to pay Jackson Holliday and Gunnar Henderson and all these guys a ton of money is not likely. I don't have a ton of confidence, but so either get the most out of Jackson Holliday between now and 2030 or try to sign him as on the sooner side, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that is our first iteration of the Chirp Meter.
Great job, Matt. I told you I was going to give you a pat on the back, and I totally forgot until right now. So great job. Great work.
I appreciate it. We were actually going to do that on the Ravens side before the Maxx Crosby news broke and had to move that over for obvious reasons. But I think that worked out pretty well. We're going to be back again on Thursday, like we talked about. We'll be able to recap the first day of official NFL free agency. Certainly going to be a lot to talk about there, whether it's the Ravens signing players or players leaving for elsewhere. Isaiah Likely is going to be in high demand on the tight end market. Interested to see how that market kind of shapes out for him after the up and down year he had, but will be a lot to unpack there in general. Remember to like and subscribe. We are up to, I think, over 60 followers now or subscribers now on YouTube. Numbers, they're
Those
modest.
Those are 60 best friends, and
that's
everyone
right.
else, we don't like you until you subscribe. That's not true, but you know what I mean.
Get it done. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget as well to follow us on socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Anything else? That's it. Sam, any final words for the good people?
Just follow along as free agency gets underway these next couple days. Myself, my beat partner Brian Wacker, Josh Tolentino will have it all covered as things unfold, as news unravels, where they're going, where they are, where they're headed. I said that twice, but that's fine. So yeah, follow along, and we're excited to be back in here. And if you have thoughts on what we're saying, and if you have thoughts on what the Ravens or Orioles should do, let us know.
Let us know. All right, that'll do it. Thank you all so much for listening, and have a good one.
We've won millions, taken on the largest insurers, and backed up our reputation with big wins in the courtroom. But only one injury case matters, yours. So if you want to win, we're ready to fight for you.
Rice Law. Best advice, call Rice.